Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today I want to talk about fixing and or saving Battlefield 2042. It's clear the game is not performing as well as anybody would like it to be right now, and there are a multitude of reasons for that, many of which I think DICE and EA could actually fix without too much effort. In fact, I think some of the top criticisms of this game are things that could be ironed out in a relatively short period of time, and in my opinion, DICE should absolutely focus on those. And I've lumped these series of changes into forgotten legacy features, or you could simply just call them missing features, since basically most of the previous Battlefield games had them and they've become more or less standard expectations from the franchise, which 2042 is missing. And before I get into this fix-it list, I have a quick word from today's sponsor. Guys, when it comes to hair loss, the odds simply are not in our favor. 2 out of every 3 guys will experience some form of hair loss by the age of 35. The good news is today's sponsor Keeps can help tip the balance. They offer FDA-approved at-home hair loss prevention treatments. Now, of course, you can't save what you've already lost, so prevention is the key here. They make it super easy to get started. Just visit keeps.com/levelcap and they'll walk you through everything. Their doctors are standing by online to recommend treatment, and they ship your medication every 3 months directly to your door. It can take anywhere between 4 and 12 months to actually start seeing the results, but I think these before and after photos really speak for themselves. Again, prevention is the key, and the sooner you act, the more hair that you'll save. If you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/levelcap or click the link in the description to receive 50% off your first order. That's keeps.com/levelcap. Alright, so getting back into some of the easier things that I think could be changed with 2042. The first thing on this list is something that I think DICE could actually amend relatively easily, and that is fixing the class system. We have Specialist. I'm not suggesting getting rid of Specialist because DICE just isn't going to do that. They've clearly invested way too much development time in the Specialist system, but they could still categorize Specialist into different classes, which would get access to a set list of gadgets rather than letting every class in the game use any gadget. Snipers with rocket launchers, medics with ammo packs, these types of things that kind of break down the traditional class system just simply aren't necessary. And while it would require a little bit of balance figuring out which gadgets to give to which specialists and how to classify things, I've already seen plenty of amazing suggestions on Reddit on how to do it very, very specifically. And to be honest, it just doesn't seem like it would be all that hard to do. DICE doesn't need to create any brand new assets. They just need to lock certain items behind certain class types. It would be pretty darn easy. One patch could more or less fix one of the top criticisms of this game. Another extremely easy thing for DICE to do, and I know it's easy because they've literally already done this as temporary game modes, is add in permanent game modes for Team Deathmatch and the 64-player versions of each mode. They already developed the 64-player versions of Breakthrough and Conquest for last-gen consoles, so just keeping it as a permanent mode seems like no harm done, especially if you keep it as a permanent matchmaking mode on the main menu. In addition to that, TDM has already been designed and exists in the Portal realm, but actually getting in and playing it for XP is not really available, so nobody's playing it, and it's a great area to warm up, practice with weapons, experiment with different loadout types, and just get new unlocks and stuff like that. Historically, TDM has been one of the longest lasting game modes that sustains custom servers in Battlefield games for years and years. Why is it not on the main menu? Put it on the main menu. It seems like DICE could actually do this on the back end. They probably wouldn't even have to release a patch in order to make this playable. Now, going down the same train of thought with servers, why not just add in the standard mode server browser? We have a server browser for Portal game modes, but let's put a standard server browser in there as well. People want to know what's popular, what people are playing. If TDM's popping off, I'll join a TDM server. If people are queuing up endlessly for their favorite breakthrough map, I want to see what that map is, as opposed to matchmaking randomly throwing me into some of my least favorite maps over and over again. People like to have a little bit of control. Even if it's a click or two away to get to that server browser, that's fine. Most players might just go for the matchmaking option, and if you want, why not just let people server browse? It's been a feature in all the past Battlefield games. who's it hurting to put it back up there? I think it can only improve the game and probably isn't that much work since there's already clearly a server browser in the game. You just have to enable it for standard modes. Now, one of the last things that I would consider basically legacy feature, something that should be in the game, is all chat. And I can kind of understand why DICE would turn it off. And if this was the only thing they had cut from the game versus previous games, it probably wouldn't be a big deal, but it is one more thing that's being added onto the pile. Personally, I'm not all that upset about all chat, but what I did used to enjoy using it for was congratulating an enemy on a good kill. Like if I was a helicopter pilot and somebody sniped me out of my cockpit or hit me with a rocket, I'd be like, nice shot, in all chat. I know a lot of people use it for negativity and there's a lot of trolling on there. I usually just had it turned off most of the time, and I turn it on every now and then to see what people were saying. If there's somebody in the server playing in a weird way that was very suspect of cheating or something, I'd see if somebody else was chatting about it. I personally think a good compromise would be to have all chat turned off by default, and if you wanted it turned back on, you could go into your settings and click the all chat button, and that way people who want it can have it, and then DICE doesn't have to worry about everyone hopping on the game being exposed to some of the nasty things that can be said on there. Now, going further with the communication, the lack of in-game voice chat is weird considering that previous games supported it. I think there was a small percentage of players that actually used it, but the people that did use it relied on it, and having a new game not with that functionality is extremely aggravating. I can certainly speak to how aggravating it is to not have different jet and helicopter controls when every previous Battlefield game has given me different jet and helicopter controls, and all of a sudden I don't have it. Now it's a massive downgrade in my personal experience. So the code for the VoIP system obviously exists. You should more or less be able to plug it in since this whole game is running on Frostbite just like all the past Battlefield games. Why cut this type of feature? The fact that they thought Hazard Zone would somehow be successful without in-game voice communication is insane to me. I mean, I don't even want to get into Hazard Zone, but this is just something that they need to bring back into the game. Add it into the game. It's a staple feature. If Battlefield 2042 and this platform is supposed to take us many, many years into the future of the Battlefield landscape, then we need VoIP. Now, of all the things I've just mentioned there, most of them, in fact, almost all of them would require very little new assets, probably very little work to actually integrate into the game. It just doesn't seem like it would be that hard to get a lot of that stuff on board, and it would do a massive amount to improve the game's image. And speaking of the game's image, how it's portrayed online, I think some of the biggest problems right now are the specialist voiceover lines. Some of the most popular specialists in the game have the most annoying voiceover lines that take you out of the environment, the styling of the game. It makes it feel very disjointed, specifically with Angel and I think McKay as well. They're two of the more annoying specialists in the game, and putting in a little work to change these guys I think would do a lot to changing the game's image, because right now it's become a meme. Angel's voiceover lines have become a meme for the state of the game, and it's basically just become anti-propaganda for Battlefield 2042. It's so cheesy, it's so bad looking. Just change it, put a little work in, change the VO lines, change the animations. It'll be worth it in the long run if you actually are committed to changing the image of Battlefield 2042. Now, that kind of update though, I would certainly put on the back burner, and I would lump it more into a health update category for the game. I think there's some more long-term fixes and things that DICE absolutely should be doing and preparing to do with this game to make it better in the long term. For example, map health updates. The maps are not well designed. They're one of the biggest criticisms of the game, and fixing them is not a small amount of work. DICE has said that it takes about a year to design each map, so updating the maps probably takes a lot of time as well. DICE should reintroduce a CTE server for testing 128 player servers. It's not confirmed, but it's rumored that DICE tested with 60 to 70 players for most of their map balance stuff pre-launch, which explains why the maps flow so poorly. If they want to test with more players, then do it on CTE. In Battlefield 4, DICE used CTE easy to design a map from white box to final product, and it's one of the better maps in Battlefield 4. It's a fantastic jungle map, and it's just something that I think they should continue to utilize as a very worthwhile tool, since Battlefield is honestly a hard game to balance. Why not try and do a lot of the balance work before it goes out to the main game? One of the other issues of Battlefield 2042, which I haven't seen talked about as much because I think many of the other issues are much more pressing, but the netcode in 2042 isn't fantastic. It seems like DICE has lowered the tick rate in 2042 to deal with 128 player servers, but the smaller game modes don't seem to get improved tick rate. Again, this is not confirmed, but from my experience playing the game, there's just so many deaths that are so quick, many deaths where I feel like I've run behind cover, I should now be safe, but I still die to damage that I received when I was outside of cover. There's not enough time between starting to get shot and actually being dead to react and have any sort of meaningful engagement in a lot of situations, because the netcode just seems to dump all the damage at once. So on the receiving end of damage, you might die in half a second, where on shooting somebody in the game, it takes a full second or 2 seconds to take him down. That is at least my perception of how it feels right now, and I think it's due to lesser netcode due to the massive player count. Again, this would be much more of a long-term health update, but I can bet you that this will be one of the main things focused on once the core issues of Battlefield 2042 are resolved. Now, of course, there's a billion other things we can lump into the health updates. There's still plenty of bugs and quirks and weird things happening with the game that don't line up correctly. I think in terms of overall balance, the most work that needs to be done right now is the balance between vehicles and infantry. Vehicles are very powerful. Helicopters especially can dominate. Jets seem nearly untouchable except for by other jet pilots, and infantry have very few good tools to deal with them. Sure, the SOFLAM is a little bit exploitable at times, but the basic recoilless rocket launcher is very unenjoyable. In fact, when you compare the recoilless to, say, the bazooka that is in portal mode, the bazooka is far more enjoyable to shoot down aircraft. And if you go back and play Battlefield 3 and use the SMA or something like that, the projectile velocity is so much faster, it enables you to engage aircraft at further distance. Infantry need more skill-based weapons to take down aircraft quickly because they can absolutely dominate, and having to rely on lock-on mechanics is so unenjoyable for somebody who knows that they could be single-shotting them with the SMA, but instead we have the recoilless, which is slow and clunky and just really bad for skill-based takedowns. Alright, now let's start to look at Battlefield 2042 in a little bit more of a long-term sense. It's received a terrible public perception at launch. It can start to fix that and repair it slowly, but once DICE has fixed many of the core aspects, balanced things out more, gotten the game more or less functioning decently on most platforms, what do you do then to get players back in? DICE needs a wow factor to say, hey, come play our game and not the 50 other comparable games out there, because we're offering what? Well, tornadoes ain't doing it. They're super gimmicky, unenjoyable to play with. What else do you got, DICE? I hope they have some pretty cool stuff planned for their live service seasonal content updates, because there needs to be something pretty exciting happening in this game to bring people in. I mean, with Battlefield 5, had DICE announced a massive Russian DLC with all of the big famous Russian battles, that would have turned a lot of heads. It probably would have brought a lot of people back into Battlefield 5. What do you do with a fictitious war game? What kind of content injection can you give us to really turn some heads? Once the game is healthy, working well, when you bring those players back in, they're more likely to stay, but how do you bring them back in? We need a wow factor DLC, whether it's a massive load of maps, a massive load of weapons, something really crazy and wild like an ion cannon strike or something weird just to turn some heads. I really hope DICE has an ace up their sleeve regarding future content. Now, overall, what I've laid out here, I think is a pretty logical and I would say reasonable roadmap for DICE to follow with 2042. Obviously, they have their plans laid out for them. There's probably a ton of stuff going on behind the scenes. I don't know what it is. I think they've been a little lax on the communication as of late. Big studios like this don't like to promise things early and then fail to deliver on them later on. So instead, they just don't talk about what they're working on, which can make it feel like they're not working on anything. I do believe they are working on a lot of stuff, but we're going into holiday season, which is always tricky when you launch a game before holiday season and then a lot of developers get time off for the holidays. You don't hear a lot about what's being worked on, which is exactly when most gamers are playing the most. They're getting time off of school, they're trying to avoid spending time with their annoying family, they're playing games a lot more. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about my fix-it plan for Battlefield 2042. Do you think this game is salvageable? If DICE does things I've mentioned here, would it be reason enough to come back and try out the game if you've stopped playing it? I'm personally still enjoying the game, but if DICE did any or all of these things, man, would the experience be so much more enjoyable. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.